This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday, January 5th meeting of the Design and Project Review Committee. We do have a quorum. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Staff, is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Yes,
I make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay.
Who made the motion? There were like three of you.
Mario.
Thank you.
I think Megan had the second. So can you call the roll now?
Knighton,
Aye.
Griffith,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Kano,
Aye.
Biggs. Oh, she said she would not be here today. Papa,
Aye.
Eckersberg,
Aye.
Hyank,
Aye.
Pratt,
Aye.
DeHall.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Not sure we got Tristan Fire.
Oh,
Aye.
and Tristan,
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion passes. We have one item of business today, and I'll read it in a moment. But if you would like to provide, the order that we'll do things in is we'll do the presentation from the applicant, and then we'll take public comment. So if there's anybody who would like to provide public comment, please send me a message in the chat and indicate that you'd like to speak, and then I'll put you on the list and call you in order. And then I would ask, because this is a pretty big project and we don't have the normal 2 hours that we have for Dapper, that you keep your comments to under 2 minutes. And so keep in mind that there'll be other opportunities to speak on this project. This is just the beginning. There's a land use commission meeting, and there'll be planning and development committee and city council, at least one of each of those. So we'll go from there. And then, okay, so new business, 1732, 34, 40 Orrington Avenue, plan development, John Carlson, Trammell Crow, Chicago. Development Inc. applicant submits for a zoning map amendment and a special use for a plan development to construct a 10-story mixed-use building with approximately 4,120 square feet of ground floor retail and approximately 22,100 square feet of office laboratory space and 35 enclosed parking stalls. The applicant requests to amend the current zoning district of the subject property, D2 Downtown Retail Core District, to D3 Downtown Core Development District. The applicant also requests site development allowances in the D3 district for 1, an FAR of 7, where 4.5 is permitted and up to 8 can be requested. 2, a ziggurat setback of 6.4 feet to 11 feet, where a minimum of 40 feet is required at the building height of 32 feet along Orrington Avenue. 3, a height of 149.5 feet where 85 feet is allowed and up to 170 feet can be requested. And 4, 35 on-site parking stalls where a minimum of 211 is required. The applicant may seek, and the Land Use Commission may consider additional site development allowances as may be necessary or desirable for the proposed development. The Land Use Commission makes a recommendation to City Council, the determining body for this case. So with that, I will turn it over to Trammell Crow. And Johnny, why don't you introduce your team before you get going so we know all the days.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks, Johanna. Again, my name is Johnny Carlson with Trammell Crow Company. I'm joined by a few other folks on the Trammell Crow team, David Pano and Morgan Bear-Blaska. In addition to our development team, we have 2 architects on the line at ESG, Matt Blewett and Matt Axman, who will walk you through the presentation. And our zoning attorneys on, if there's any technical questions, Katie Jenke-Dale from DLA and Lue Abona, our traffic consultant, if there's any traffic items that want to be discussed from KLOA is on the line. And then Matt Price from Power Construction. So before we jump into the design, which I know that's what we're all here for, and I appreciate all your comments we've had over the past few months, as this is an important corner To the community, we like to be strong stakeholders in every community we develop in, and we love Evanston. And we're excited that this could potentially be our second project in the last 5 years here in your community. So thank you for your time today. Just a high level overview of what we're talking about, because there's been numerous meetings, but I would just want to make sure everyone understands the type of development that we're here to talk about. This is not a traditional office building. This is a life science research and laboratory building that obviously has office components within it. There is zero private lab infrastructure space in Evanston. So this is not your traditional office building that's scattered throughout your community. This is a first class, best in class type product that you can see in some of the coasts and in areas like downtown Chicago that's just delivering and have delivered some of the more recent life science projects. And we were part of those that are coming out of the ground and are in the ground. So we're really proud to be part of the mission to drive science, to drive innovation, technology, and keep jobs in your community. So I just wanted to make sure we're all aware this is a little bit different strain of office. You cannot do this type of office, and employees can't do this type of science in their basement. So the work from home, as we watch the news every day, this is a unique office strain, and just want to make note of that. We follow research. We're an active developer throughout the country, the most active developer in and around United States. And what we are following right now is by 2024, the average worker, CBRE states, will be in the office at 3.4 days per week. So yes, it'll be a different review and how they get to work and how they work, but that is the largest real estate company in the globe saying the world is changing. They will be in the office, they'll be in there less, more flexible. And that's just a traditional office. So if you compile that with life science, we're seeing our downtown office buildings are full at capacity in the life science research that are coming to work. So hitting on that. And then I think other items that we've heard throughout the process that we've addressed, are we going to sell this to a university? Are we going to be taken off the tax rolls? All those sorts of things we feel we have addressed with covenants that we're working with the law department on to make sure that we're protecting what's important to you and what we've heard throughout the process. So I think overall, this is a strong project. We feel like the development allowances are supported with public benefit over $500,000 that we've worked with staff to come up with, in addition to contributing to the Affordable Housing Fund, some of the transit funds that we're trying to contribute to, none of which are required, but we feel that this is the right project and we're really excited to be here. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt Blewett, and he'll pull up or can direct you on the slides to review the quick design and then let you ask questions, as we've had numerous responses back and forth, Johanna, if that makes sense. So if you
That sounds good.
Right?
Great. Thanks, Johnny, and thanks everyone for giving us the opportunity to present to you today. Is everyone able to see my screen?
We can see it.
Great. I'll try to keep this brief as we have a pretty large presentation here. Obviously, we can scroll back to anything if there's any particular questions or comments that we need to address with our slides. We'll start here at the context map, just showing the project site in its context of the greater Evanston area. In the red here, box kind of centered on the screen to the west is the Avador Evanston project that our firm worked with Trammell Crow previously on. And is a successful project for both us and Trammell Crow. We'll zoom in here. Actually, I'll go full screen. Zoom in here to the immediate site context, as we discussed previously, about 21,000 square foot site adjacent to the Orrington Hotel and kind of kitty corner from Northwestern University. Here's an aerial context just to give an idea of the surrounding heights of the buildings and seeing some of that context three-dimensionally. Some views here just of the existing site, which I think staff has already shown some of the existing BK building and the existing residential site and the quality of the alley as it stands today. So here is the project dropped in. It's a little bit of a rough image, but gives a general sense of the height comparison of the proposed building adjacent to the Orrington Hotel and some of the residential buildings nearby. And as you look to the top left and to the right of the screen, you can see how it compares to some of the more downtown core context. On the right, we just have a few perspective images giving kind of a similar view from every angle to see how it compares and relates to the surrounding context. Here's our architectural site plan. Just a general overview of the site. We'll start to the northwest and work clockwise around. So our entry plaza, as you can see, is set back from the street face, providing a nice kind of warm, inviting entry, very deep with some plantings. We've worked with both staff and Design Evanston to address, what kind of plantings should be most appropriate in this location, to address kind of wind conditions in the north elevation. But we feel like this is a nice, welcoming entry. As you work clockwise towards the east, we've got a large retail space, potentially a restaurant tenant, or who we would target for that location. Definitely an active use, a lot of glass storefront, addressing the street and activating that important corner of Clark Street in Orrington. As you can see on the outside of the building, just to the east of the blue active use area, we're proposing an area where the planters will be pulled back such that it could provide for sidewalk or cafe seating in accordance with the city ordinance. Working our way down, we've got a large bike storage room facing the street, giving it nice access and visibility. And then working towards the alley, both our entry to our parking and to our loading area are proposed off the alley to keep those curb cuts out of the pedestrian walkways. This project would actually reduce the curb cuts currently on the site and add a little street parking actually on the Clark Street street elevation. So here's the civil site plan, just showing here that we'll continue the current paving style that you see along Orrington and Clark Street. So we'll just continue those same kind of detail paving with the brick pavers at the curb edge, and then the concrete paving in between. Landscape plan, we've worked with staff and Design Evanston to address this plan a few times. We don't have a large amount of landscape, but we're proposing replacing the existing planters on the Orrington Avenue Street face, the two smaller planters to the north, allowing for a larger sidewalk presence for a potential restaurant user. We're showing both perennial grasses and low growing evergreens to make sure that it's kind of a landscape for all seasons. And we've got a few images of some of those proposed items could be in the final landscape design. So these are some of the low growing evergreens, some of the perennial grasses that might be incorporated, as well as ornamental trees. These would be located towards the entry plaza, and some of the street lining trees would be approved by forestry. We'll run through the plans quickly. So this is the below grade parking, 35 spaces. Some motorcycle spaces, as well as planning for EV spaces to be for electric vehicles, some that are day one, and as well as a few that would be prepared for future hookups. Again, we've kind of walked through the first floor plan. So a typical, this is the second floor, so kind of a larger office plate. We're showing a double height space at the entry to even make that more maybe a wow moment as you enter the building, a little more monumental, so to speak. The third floor with where the you can kind of see how the ziggurat setback along Orrington. So the building gently arcs on the east facade, and so the setback kind of varies. At the middle, you got that 6.4 feet to where the glass face to the property line, up to 11 feet towards the northeast and the southeast. Go back and you can see that again on a typical floor. We've got that highlighted, maybe a little clearer. What we're showing here is just kind of a typical layout that we might see, or a generic layout for a lab user. As Johnny mentioned, this building is tailored designed towards life science users. There's always an office component, but really trying to show here that we're maximizing views and light into the building is for both the office spaces and potential laboratory spaces. We've found great success with that in the Chicago market that we've been working with the users down there. So this just gives you kind of a general idea of how the offset core provides maximum flexibility and openness for a user. These users, you never know really what kind of science they intend to do. So the bigger the open area they can work with, the more innovative the science or creative they can get with how the labs are laid out. And then the top floor, top occupiable floor, has a large roof deck. So the building steps back away from Orrington, providing a large outdoor amenity space, roof terrace that faces towards Northwestern and as well as Lake Michigan. In this floor, we anticipate, like we have in some of our other projects, a large lounge area, maybe a lounge component for tenants, maybe a large boardroom, meeting area, as well as a on-site fitness and locker area that would also serve bicycle commuters. And the top floor would be a large penthouse, mechanical penthouse. These buildings, as Johnny mentioned, are a little different are very different from traditional office. So they have a large mechanical requirement. There's a lot more air being moved in and out of the building, as well as just everything is kind of larger than it would be on a typical office building. So we've dedicated a full floor as well as some outdoor space, rooftop space for mechanical equipment. So just some views looking around the building. We'll just highlight some of the things that have changed, I think, as working with staff and with Design Evanston. So this is a view from the northeast, looking back towards the building. We really tried to soften the building's massing in conversation with all the groups that we've met with, just the bulk and the height of the building, to try to minimize that as much as possible by gently bowing and arcing the building's facades, softening the corners. Here you can see highlighted that there's a balcony on every tenant level that has that same great view to the northeast and to the lake. So that's a nice amenity, and I think also will activate that kind of important corner that we see. And here's a pedestrian level view, just showing how that sidewalk cafe experience might be felt with a restaurant tenant. So we could see activating the streetscape as well as providing potential outdoor seating and just to heighten that pedestrian experience above what it is today, kind of a surface parking lot. The north elevation, highlighting the entry, and we'll go into a kind of a street level view so you can see that a little better. Here we're looking at the northwest perspective. So the western elevation of the building is largely opaque material due to the fact that the core is offset towards the west. So in order to activate that, we've looked at a three-dimensional cladding material that gives visual interest to that elevation. We've softened the corner. So this we see as kind of the gateway view coming from downtown and into this portion of the city. So we wanted to really make this corner special. So we've got this curved glass corner that looks back towards the city and kind of highlights the entry to the building. One more thing to point out with this view. So in conversation with Design Evanston as well as with staff, we've really looked at the top floor of the building and tried to provide more articulation and design to make that more integrated, that mechanical penthouse more integrated with the overall building design. Here's a close-up view of that western elevation with those three-dimensional panels and kind of a, not random, but a bit of a undulating pattern as they go up the building to catch light in different ways and really provide some visual interest. Here we get the close-up of that entry condition, entry plaza. As we said, it's like a double height canopy as well as a double height space inside, providing opportunity for an interesting lighting fixture, art piece. We could see some potential for public art in this area as well. And you can see kind of its relation to its adjacent context. Again, that north elevation, a zoom in of the northwest, so that corner, we see how activated we'd like it to be, how make it a nice glassy, inviting corner, promoting safety and pedestrian experience. Some more views looking towards the north. We'll run quickly through here. That's a little hard to read, but the blue is intended to kind of show the setbacks from the property line. So this is looking towards the west. This is the east elevation. So you can see as it steps away from, as the building steps back from Clark Street. And then from Orrington, this is the south elevation. The materials of the building are primarily metal panel and glass. At the base level, we've got what we're calling a wood look material, where hopefully folks have had the opportunity to look at the material board that we sent. But we're looking at a number of different products, whether they're metal panel or composite materials, but something that gives a nice warm natural tone to the base of the building. We've got two kind of colors of metal panel that are playing on on the building. So we've got kind of a champagne color here. We're calling metal panel number 2. Metal panel number 1 is this more silvery pewter zinc color that is meant to complement the champagne. And then at the bottom left here, you can see the product. We've got a product that we are designing around that provides the opportunity to do these 3-dimensional kind of panels and cladding system for that western facade. To round out the material palette, there's a small amount of masonry, concrete masonry on the south and the west facade on the first and second floors. So on the alley facing side, and then on the side, kind of once you get past the lower portion of where Beck's is towards the southwest. This was a exhibit put together to respond to staff to just kind of highlight some of that pedestrian experience. So showing some of the lighting strategies, signage strategies that could be incorporated, how we're handling, got a low knee wall that likely casts stone to, make sure we've got durability for snow removal, showing the active uses and the seating areas. Again, similar exhibit showing some of the features of the entry plaza and some of the lighting strategies and solutions. Again, this kind of, highlighting lighting. Signage solutions. So, we think we'll have a monument sign and an address sign towards the main entry areas. And obviously we'll have directional signage for parking and loading off of the alley. Just a quick exhibit to show height comparison to the adjacent structures. And we ran through the areas at the top of the presentation. And I'll skip to this. We've had a few conversations with BirdFriendly Evanston. So this exhibit shows the strategies that we intend to employ, and we'll discuss some ones. We actually had a follow-up conversation yesterday with that group, and we've committed to some additional bird-friendly strategies and some other things that we're going to try to follow up with them about and research on our end. But just a high level, the areas we deem to be the most the highest threat for birds would be what we're calling facade zone 1, so towards the base of the building and above where our terrace is on the roof deck. So in those two areas, we've committed to not using any glass railings to reduce reflections or bird strikes against the balcony railings. Additionally, we've committed to, at least at the podium level, the bottom 2 floors and the 3rd floor, reducing the plantings that we're showing along the perimeter, as well as researching potentially the use of some treated glazing or awnings on the first 2 levels to reduce the reflections of the trees or make the visibility of the glass higher visibility for those levels. Again, no glass railings on the level 10 roof deck. And then we've committed, since this document was made, we've committed to either treating the glass railings on the tenant balconies with bird-friendly glass, or doing all metal railings in those locations as well. I might stop there and open it up unless we want to run through the rest of this is kind of construction logistics and construction management.
I don't think we need to really run through the construction management pieces of things at this point. That we'll definitely have follow-up meetings following potential approval of this to do that, and the public could have that as well. I haven't seen, is anyone in the chat wanting to do public comments or have any questions public wise? Just put a chat message in or raise your hand with the Zoom. All right, Libby, you have two minutes or less.
Less, definitely, because Matt just described our meeting yesterday, which was very enjoyable, and we really appreciated meeting with them. And so I think they addressed, Matt addressed most of our concerns, so I really don't need to say very much, except I know that they're researching the kind of glass and reflectivity and so on for those lower floors, which are a concern because they're going to reflect the trees. But otherwise, we think that we're on the same path. There's one thing that we discussed a little bit right at the end, which is lighting. And so we just want to make sure that whatever the lighting is doesn't attract birds, migrating birds, particularly during the migrating seasons of fall and spring. So we didn't talk very much about that lighting, and we didn't see one of those pictures that Matt showed. But otherwise, I think that we're on the right track, and we're going to continue to talk with them. So we really have appreciated that, and I think that we're moving forward there. So thanks a lot to the team that we worked with yesterday. That's it.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Any other members of the public want to provide any comments? Otherwise, then we'll go to staff for questions. All right, seeing none, let's start with Public Works. Public Works comments or questions?
Can you briefly go over the access in the back? And I think there's a utility pole over there. See if that interferes with the access or not.
Yeah, I was going to see if I could pull up our auto turn plans. I don't know, Lue, if you have any initial comments to that.
Yeah, I'll hit on it quickly, Matt, just not technical while you're finding the page, but I know we, as part of our public benefit, we are going to be replacing the alley portion of the pavement adjacent to our property, and part of that is burying the utilities there. So I believe if you're speaking about the one in the alley off of our loading, that those utilities are going to be buried there. So that pole most likely, if Matt Price wants to these plans, is no longer going to be there.
Right. We think the pole serves the housing that's there now at the property. So we think it goes away, and then whatever we need for the new development will be buried underground, coming from Orrington or Clark Street from ComEd.
Okay, thank you.
Other PWA questions?
Yeah, how about the loading for the front entrance? You showed, a lot of extra angle parking, and then the loading is parallel to the curb, but they seem to kind of conflict with each other at a point.
So loading, are you talking about pedestrian delivery?
Yes, yeah, on Clark Street.
Yeah, so I think the intention would be that you'd be able to pull, we left enough space that you'd be able to pull parallel to the curb and then be able to still maneuver your way back out of that loading position and not interfere with the added angled parking. It's a pretty generous length here. You can see kind of a car length here.
And as part of that, just for the record, for everyone who's not aware, we're adding a net 2 stalls by eliminating some curb cuts on the site. So we're, one of which safety is always key to our development. So we believe we're improving the existing conditions by reducing curb cuts. We're adding 2 additional stalls, and we're including a drop-off area for the forward-thinking commuter. So we view this, that there'll be a number of Uber trips, there'll be a number of bike and public transportation pedestrian trips. So we're trying to satisfy all 3, and I think any new forward-thinking development needs to do that. So that's really what we try to do here. And what's unique about this is usually you lose stalls. We're actually adding stalls and improving what we view as the existing conditions.
Will the parking be assigned, the parking that's in the building, or?
Those are going to be for occupants of the building and visitors. Potentially there'll be a sign. Right now it's flexible. This is a speculative development, so we are building this without a tenant. We will break ground without a tenant most likely. So we have to be flexible. They could be, fob accessed. So they're going to be secure. They might not necessarily have a number on the stall allocated to an individual, but each time the building will be allocated a certain percentage of those, and then all the other parking stalls will be in the city ramp, and we'll pay for those. And we're working on an agreement with your team and your staff and law department on finalizing that per an agreement that we had a call, and everyone's aligned there.
Okay, so there wouldn't be any need for a sign, you know, said full or something, so people won't be going in looking for a space and being disappointed.
It'll be secure access, and there'll also will be signage, et cetera, for capacity.
And how wide are the new narrowed tree areas on Orrington? Seems like they're maybe a little too narrow.
That's a good question. I don't have the dimension right off the top of my head, but we could certainly look at that and address it with forestry or whomever to make sure that it is wide enough to accommodate a tree of this size.
And I think the question though is the planter beds plus the outdoor seating area leaves 6 foot. That's that dimension there. So that's not your question, but I think it shows you can do all of the uses that we envision here for a restaurant to have outdoor seating plus the ADA and 6 foot walk.
Right.
And are there like overhangs in the door area, just to provide some protection for passersby in event of a rain?
Yes, great question. There are. You can see the doors to go under is going to have a clear story canopy over it. And in addition to that, Matt, if you go to the elevation to show the entry over the doors, beyond that, there are items that project out that you can see there.
So we have some, yes, correct. So over each doorway, there's an awning that projects about, just over 3 feet. And then all the glass and entries are recessed slightly into the building. But the primary protection would be these awnings.
And have you done any wind studies or proposed to do any wind studies for this building?
We have not.
We typically have it on the size of that. We're not, there's an existing alley. We don't view anything to be out of sorts. I know, Matt, we always look at shadow and other studies, but in this development, we don't view this to be creating a tunnel effect. But I think it's just like in the urban environment, buildings are adjacent, and this building steps back and should not be an issue.
Yeah, that's one thing. I just want to warn you to make sure you detail those balconies properly for drainage. It has been a problem in other buildings, so please be careful about that.
No, that's a great point. I will tell you, Matt and Matt Axman, ESG, both did a similar balcony at a project that we did downtown and recently opened another life science project. And a lot of lessons learned, and we want to make sure we put those into this project too.
Yeah, and just a little bit of detail on that. We intend to do internal drainage on these with the drop slab and raised pedestal pavers. So there's no, if the worry is at all for any kind of scuppering or overflow, it's not the drainage style we do for these types of balconies.
All right, any other public works questions?
Johanna, this is Edgar. I don't have any questions or comment at this time, but I'm going to take some time to review the streetscape. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to have been too involved with the review of these plans, but I want to meet with my staff, see what their recommendations were, and if we have any questions or concerns moving forward. So I'll reach out to you and to the developers if anything comes up.
Thanks. All right, any other public works before we move on? Are there exterior issues? All right, fire, any comments or questions?
Johanna, fire's good.
Okay. Sustainability, Kara, any comments or questions?
Yes, I hope that the developer could speak to the pursuit of LEED certification in a little more detail.
Yeah, so just like our other 2 office buildings downtown that we just recently developed, this will have a goal of LEED silver. And all of our buildings we develop are really forward-thinking buildings, trying our best to deliver the office building and lab building of the future. So There are some limitations with laboratory environments where, for instance, gas versus electric, there's a number of things that you need to power differently than just a traditional building that we have to adhere to. So we are looking at purchasing some credits. We are going to have a goal of silver, and every decision being made on recyclable materials, et cetera, are going to be our goals. So I'll hand it to Matt and Matt at ESG if you have any additional comments, but that's traditionally how we've addressed all this.
I think it's worth noting as well that both of those buildings in Chicago, well, at least one of them has already received LEED Gold, and the other one is in line to receive LEED Gold as well, and both are pursuing the WELL standard for buildings. So I think we take it very seriously, and we try to incorporate some of those same strategies. As Johnny mentioned, that the lab buildings pose a particular challenge in some ways, just because they do use a lot more energy than a traditional office building, or really any kind of building. And we try to mitigate that with extremely efficient systems and just kind of novel ways to reclaim energy and heat recovery and other things to maximize that. So it's a long way of saying our goals go beyond LEED in some ways, just to try to make the most sustainable building possible, with given the type of use that goes on here, and just the need to be efficient from a bottom line value as well, because it really helps the overall project. But our strategies in general, it's going to be a high performing facade. We've got green roofs. We'll be doing water conservation. A lot of our primary kind of strategies that we'll be employing.
Thank you.
All right, transportation mobility. Jessica, any comments or questions?
Yes, I would first like to say I really appreciate how thoughtful the design has been for various mobility options. With bike racks, please follow the APBP guidelines for bike racks. That's the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals. They have a guideline that provides information on the types of bike racks that should be utilized and how to place them so that parking can be best utilized. And I can provide that to you if you'd like. Then on the site plans, I would like to see the sidewalk carry through the driveways. And I think you noted this, but the slope of the sidewalk should not change. So just make sure that the sidewalk carries through.
That's an alley, so it's really shouldn't carry through at that point.
The sidewalk should carry through alleys. The sidewalk always takes precedent over the driveway and entrance into the alley. The sidewalk should carry through.
And just for the record, we will include that. So if there's a condition of the meeting today, we will satisfy that.
Yeah, that would be great. Then with the outdoor seating area, we've had issues in the past with restaurants wanting to place the seating next to the building. And if there's any way that it can be communicated through leases or other means to make sure that any restaurant is aware of the allowed location for the outdoor cafe, and that the sidewalk will carry through and not zigzag over and then back over again, that it'll be a straight path for the sidewalk.
And we're okay with that condition also.
And then I saw the addition of the locker rooms. I think that's fantastic. Will there be showers in the locker rooms?
Yes. There will be. We envision that's part of just bicycle storage, interior, outside, and people walking, running to work, et cetera. We want to provide that option.
Could you reflect the showers on the site plans just to make sure that that is noted?
Yes.
And then with the, thanks for including the Div Station. I think that's fantastic. I would say that the cost of that is a bit high for a lightweight station that could include a heavyweight station, which is even better than a lightweight station. Or you could do multiple lightweight stations, but just wanted to note that.
That's great. We actually, Katie on our team put us in contact with one of their programs at Divi. So we've looked at the two options and included that as part of our public benefit to pay for that. And it's valued at $65,000. So if it's light or heavy or any, I have a feeling that in 2 years when this building delivers, there might be a new system. I think you have our word and our commitment to provide. We're going to provide the system that's the best and adequate at that point in time in the future if things change. But right now, at a minimum, we're committing to that.
Yeah, well, and I manage the Divi program with the city, and I can tell you it's not going anywhere right now. So again,
All right. Well, hopefully it will, but we're here. We're aligned with you to deliver that because it's good for the community and every visitor that comes to our building.
yes, thank you. And I have no other comments.
Great, thank you. And I would just emphasize what Jessica just said about the Sidewalk Cafe. Our preference is for them to be further away from the building, and often restaurants operationally don't want their wait staff or patrons crossing over the public sidewalk. They don't like that, but it doesn't make for a good pedestrian environment. We've had lots of issues regarding that. Okay, I think we're on to planning and zoning and other CD issues. I'll just add, if you have a tenant at some point that wants to put a sign at the top of the building that's brightly lit and can be seen from miles away, we're generally not in support of that. So as you meet with people and talk about things, the tall building signs, we've allowed them in some spots, but really do not like them. There's not a ton of value. We're not near a highway. You can't even see them from very far away anyway. It doesn't help. So signs are a separate permit entirely, but just mark the date. We've said I really don't like tall building signs.
Yep. No, we read between the lines on some of the comments from staff in the past few months. So I think that's where Matt and his team did a great job of trying to address signage opportunities at the front entry, and we'll work within code. And if we have to ask for something, we'll have a public process to do so.
Great. And then why don't we go over to Angel? Any comments or questions?
I did. I just had one comment as I was looking for this. As you move into the space and you plan in the future and you have a restaurant that's using the corner there, restaurants are obviously required to maintain 250 feet around the facility in terms of garbage and all of that. I just want to make sure that you guys have a plan depending on who's using what space for snow removal and garbage removal, and make sure that the sidewalks are being kept clean and maintained.
Correct. We'll have 24/7 security and property management full time with the staff to make sure that they handle all that. So I think overall, eyes on the street, people collecting snow and all those items that you mentioned, trash, composting, et cetera, will be internal to the building and then picked up as needed off the alley. So we feel like we have a strong plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, planning and zoning team, any comments or questions?
I'll wait to see if my colleagues have anything before I have my questions, Johanna.
Katie, colleagues, anybody comments or questions?
I'll just say that Johanna, echo your statement about the signage. I'll just leave that at that. And just so that it's on the record, I know it sometimes is an issue that comes up, but with the parking, the 35 spaces on site, that we are looking at the applicant leasing 100 spaces, I believe it was, at the Church Street parking garage, which is down the street. So there will be some additional parking available for anyone who may have had that concern on the call.
And I would add, I think we've talked about this internally. We'd want you to keep that. I don't know what, and Mike Rivera wasn't able to join this meeting this morning, but I think we don't want to see that once the building stabilized, oh, look, our tenants haven't leased the spaces. We want out of that agreement. I think we want it in place for a number of years. So it's beyond building stabilization to maintain that parking.
Yep, and we've agreed that the language and everyone, we've had a few calls with that, and we're working on just final language of the law department. So I think the look back of are we using it, are we not, is going to be far enough out where we'll have a pattern that we're all rely on and feel good about. And we're all aligned there, because if we can't offer parking to our patrons and visitors and office users, we're not going to be successful either. So if they're used, they're used. And if not, we'll have to work with staff on that in the future.
Okay, great. Megan, Michael, any other questions or comments?
I really don't have anything to add. I would just say that it looks like it's a really well thought out plan. And I like the attention to all of the details. So I think overall, I think it's a really good use and design for the site.
Agreed.
Katie, your turn.
Okay, so I wanted to first piggyback off of Jessica Angel Schneer's questions about the garbage and composting removal for the potential restaurant use. I don't know if you could go to that ground floor plan. But something that I just noted in my plan review is the path to getting to the refuse area from the northeast corner to the southwest corner of the building. And I know that, you know, again, you've really maximized the space here, but are there any, is there going to be some sort of system in place with the building management with regard to, like, I mean, I can imagine just leaky trash bags from the restaurant user tracking through that and how that might be handled with the just building operations?
Yes, we envision, a great question. It's something that we want to make sure we're addressing. So there will be a collection area within the retail bay itself for gathering that. Often those are chilled or cooled rooms too. So smells and items like that, they'll be treated adequately. And then on pickup day, et cetera, they'll be wheeled in off business hours to the southwest corner of the site to be picked and housed internally. And this is similar to most of ours. It's actually pretty unique that those doors are literally the blue on the northeast corner, and then the blue that jogs is a back of house corridor that will direct you right to the trash area. So I think it's well thought out and should be adequate given the back house area within the retail space itself.
Okay, I was just curious because I know that seems to be a little bit of a long path to like lug the waste, but also just more area to get dirty. So my other question, I don't know, would you be able to stop sharing your screen and then I can go ahead and share mine? Thank you. So let me pop this out. So first, thank you for getting the material board together for those staff that were able to pop in and take a look before the meeting. I did take some additional photos yesterday, and I just had a couple of questions about particularly the wood-like panels and then the champagne and kind of cuter looking metal panels. I guess first, can you speak to, and maybe this will be in the catalog sheets when you submit for, you know, down the line, but I'm concerned about the fading of these. I've just seen sometimes when you have the kind of faux wood look, that treatment isn't necessarily always the best with responding to the sun, and depending on where it is on the building, it might start to look more bleached than other parts. Maybe that's the intent, I'm not sure. But and then I also wanted to note the thickness of them. I'm not sure if how this would just be applied to the building, and let's say something happens particularly at the ground level, like there's some dings and you need to replace them, how that might work.
Yeah, no, I think those are great questions. And we are working through with Power Construction, who's on the line, a number of options for these panels. In general, our design intent is that we've got kind of two tones, and that can be accomplished in a number of different materials. And to your point about durability and color fastness, all these commercial products, at least in my experience, are color fast, whether they're the composite material or the painted metal products that are available. These aren't kind of some of the, it's not, for the most part, if it is real wood, it's a treated veneer with a coating over it. If in most cases, it's not a real wood material, it's a composite. So I think in terms of color fastness, it shouldn't be an issue. I haven't experienced that with other projects we've done these types of materials. To your point on durability, the metal panels themselves, it's very thin metal, but it's a folded plated. It's not a plate material, it's a fastened, it's a folded material like you'd see on the side of the building. So it's got some additional stability. And then the composite materials are also, we could provide the cut sheets once we land on the final selection, but those are usually, particularly for these commercial products, pretty durable. We do raise them off the ground for that concern. So that cast stone base would keep them from really interacting with the ground at all. And the only areas that are really coming down in contact where people could even touch them is on those pillars. So it's a relatively limited amount of space where it is like meeting a pedestrian area where someone can interact with it. Less likely to have those dings and nicks. We try to keep the glass being the primary low material and keep that material kind of up high.
Yeah, and something to note also, Matt, just in these samples, if you're kind of noting the thinness of that material, I don't know if you guys can see my screen here, but in reality, that material usually has an additional core to it. So what you're seeing in terms of that sample is just the aluminum that's applied to the core material. So in reality, that material generally is much thicker. It's what you're not seeing here is the substrate that the material is adhered to.
Yeah, and then just add to that, if we did end up going with a solid plate material, it'd be an 1/8 inch thick. So you can think about that. If people can think in measurements, but it would be much thicker. That what we're seeing there is probably like 32nd inch thicker. So
right.
So
Okay, is that that substrate is obviously to get the kind of folded look of the decorative panel. How is that going to kind of work? I think it looks really great. I just am wondering how, I guess to Ingrid's point earlier about like how is it going to be impacted by the wind, noting that that building, that particular face of the building is actually exposed at this time. The building to the south is like a one-story building, so, or to the west. So just thinking through how it's could be impacted, and also just having any of the elements hitting it.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. That material, the folded material, is based on a real product, and there's other products that can accomplish the same effect. It is, as Matt said, a thicker material. It is wind rated. We'll have cut sheets that will show that it's not. I don't think that, barring hurricane force winds, I don't think it's going to perform as other cladding materials would. In terms of your question about how they do it, it's called, for the ones that have a core, it's called route and return. It's literally cut and bent in a factory and formed to the exact specification. So it's a pretty rigid panel in the end. Taller building that we're just accomplishing down in Chicago, it's the same type of material for a 250 foot building. These types of materials are common in much taller buildings with much higher wind loading and all sorts of applications. It's not as uncommon as we may have described it or appears to be. Okay.
I was just curious. It's a definitely a more modern look, but just wanted to make sure that everything's going to continue to look how it's intended for longer than a few years.
Great questions.
My last question, you did mention, and it's on the kind of the renderings after the exterior materials exhibit. Do you have the cast stone in mind and like the color of that we could maybe have as well to be added to the material board just for us to have?
Yeah, I think we missed that on our. We can certainly get a cast stone sample over. I think what we're showing in the renderings is something that's kind of very neutral gray, but we want something that would complement the wood material as well as the metals on the building. So let us get you a sample to supplement that.
Okay. And then finally, with the rooftop terrace and the kind of pergola, is that just going to be a wood or more of like a modern look to the top? I obviously know that's primarily intended to be used by the tenants of the building. So, but what are you envisioning for that space?
I think we're still working on the final design, but I can say the
Okay.
structure will be steel likely. So it'd be a painted metal. There might be some elements, whether it's a, kind of a slatted infill that might be a wood material or wood look material to complement what's happening on the lower floors. Again, all this would be commercial grade products intended to last the life of the building. So I don't think we, would be looking to incorporate anything that would have a high maintenance or, weathering issues.
Okay. Okay, I don't think that this was noted, and because again, we're still working through finer details, but I guess just to note that any lighting that's intended to be used, if there's going to be any after hours, happy hours by any of the tenants or parties for their staff, that the light are very low to the ground and pedestrian oriented, so that does not become an issue for anyone else in the area.
Yeah, we tend to. Sorry.
Okay.
Cut you off there. We tend to select downcast and shielded lights for these locations. I mean, we don't want to contribute to any light pollution, and as we mentioned with the bird-friendly folks, we don't want to contribute to reflections in the glass as much as possible. So, our intention is always to try to downcast lighting in those locations.
Okay. I think that's all of my questions. Thank you for speaking to all of those.
Thank you.
Okay, before I go to Councilmember Kelly, just want to double check any other staff comments or questions.
Yeah, about the addresses. I see that on the Clark Street side or the main entrance, you have 714 noted. How do you want this to be acknowledged going forward? It's going to be in all the permits and everything. Do you really want to have the 17 whatever address as the main name of this project?
I'll let Johnny speak to that.
I would say that's more of an example. I think it really is going to depend on that retail bay. Is it one tenant? Is it two tenants? And the front door. We will work with you very early and make sure that we address that. But we haven't selected it yet. We're going to work with the branding. We typically don't bring any of that stuff on until we go through the process and get stakeholders like yourself to approve our project. Then we would take the next step. So there hasn't been a decision made. Sorry if that confused anyone right now. I'm calling it 1740 on all of our applications, but that's more of just a process name.
Ingrid's point's a good one, because if we have questions like 10 years from now, we want to go look back at the permitted drawings and you've gone with a Clark Street address or some other address, and we've all been approving this as 1740 Orrington, it's going to be hard to find the documents if we're looking for an address that doesn't really exist. So just something, if it could be made in shorter order, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, we'll do it. If we need to lock something in now to keep it simple, we'll follow up with you after we get it.
Yes, I think the sooner the better. All right, great. Okay, Councilmember Kelly, you had some questions or comments?
Great, thank you. Yeah, and thank you to staff and Libby Hill for all the great questions. That's really a lot of really valuable questions and concerns that have been brought up. Earlier, I expressed a concern along with other residents. As you've pointed out, this is an extremely important corner in Evanston with high visibility, the entryway from the north. And so there are concerns that the least interesting side of the building, I know now you've put some dimensionality into it and to try to create some lighting variation, but nevertheless, the wall is going to be facing west when it seemed like the obvious place for that would be up against the existing Orrington. Can you just, so that I can explain why this is impossible to have that wall up against, the existing Orrington building, as opposed to for incoming, people arriving to downtown from the north and the west, this is what we're going to see.
Yep, and good morning, Councilmember Kelly. Thanks for joining us today. I think that's a great question. It's something that we have iteratively adjusted as we've gone through our development. The reason is the floor plate, the dimensions, the core of the project. There's no way to get into this site if you have that core running on the south. So the whole entire access off the alley is from the south. And the parking below grade, which we try to do versus raise the building and make a taller building, just doesn't allow for that circulation and vehicular ingress egress coupled with the vertical transportation. And then the dimension from east to west is the largest. So as you know, with office users, floor plates that are larger are better than smaller. So we looked at this site from a number of different uses, and one, financeability, and two, just what does it mean for design? For instance, a residential tower would be a lot taller and would have an entirely different orientation versus this. So we think we've addressed it by dressing up the west facade, adding some articulation, materiality, some staggering of glass, and then things like elevator cores and offset cores actually wrap glass around that northwest corner in a round fashion. So I think overall, it's really hard for me to even know it's an offset core now looking at the new design. If Matt wants to pull it up here just to show you looking up the facade to what it looks like there. But I think overall, we've added glass, we've added articulation, materiality that is fluid and not kind of calling out the offset core. But I think there's a number of reasons why, and sorry for the long-winded answer, but that's just a few of them. So right now, that's a great shot. That's the northwest corner, that rounded edge corner of glass. It's kind of a beacon. We heard key corner, prominent corner, security, light, and making sure that's a 24/7 building, loud and clear. So we kind of added this beacon there that looks like a glass rounded edge corner that mimics the east side of the facade. And then so pulled it back to offset next to the lower level swung buildings on the west along Clark. So I think overall, this is our goal, to make this a really unique facade.
I'll only add, where you're seeing the breaks in the metal panel, it may not be clear, but we are providing glazing and windows into the elevator lobby, as well as both exit stairs, and anywhere else we can kind of tuck it in. Both from the other challenge of this west facade, and it's a bit of, where the way the building's situated to the property line is, by building code, we're limited to the amount of glazing we can provide. So we intend to provide the maximum amount of glazing that we can to provide interest on that facade, in addition to the dimensionality of both the arcing facade of the building, as well as the dimensionality of the cladding itself.
Okay. And I guess the last piece, and I'll stop and let you move on to your next question or comment, but the benching and the dimension of these laboratory facilities, the module that you have to lay out these benching with adequate safety, ingress, egress when you're working within the bench setting, is really stringent. So you're off by a few inches, it doesn't work. So that's another reason why the core and the offset and the dimension of those floor plates are really geared towards bay depths that work for this use. So it's not like you can put cubes and conferencing, you have to lay out cubes, conferencing, benching, and also safety to get in and out of in case there were ever an event to do your science within fume hoods, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'd say, that's definitely an improvement, but anything that can be done to avoid the look of the wall, any additional dimension, and obviously I'm not an architect, but I do appreciate good design and I do appreciate good architecture. So I'd say, again, if there's anything to do horizontally or something that breaks that, so it's not just like that's the wall where, the elevator shaft wall. It is, yeah, definitely an improvement. Thank you. And I did have a question. I really appreciate the question. I think Ingrid asked about wind. And I will say, it is now there's the massive Orrington and now this building. And so I would ask that there be some that we at least look at and consider whether this, what impact this might have in terms of sort of wind canyon tunnels, just so that we know, so that we're not going in without, like after the fact, acknowledging it. But I think that is something to consider, right?
Yep. We'll look at that.
The impact this might have on that block. And then I also loved Ingrid's question regarding overhang, and I appreciate that there is some, but it does look like, to make that pedestrian friendly, it would be kind of like ducking in and out of doorways to get the benefit if it were raining. And there are a couple of blocks downtown Evanston, and it is such a lovely amenity as a pedestrian to walk and not have to run inside and out of doorways, to be covered, sheltered from the rain. It looks like in this case, from what I could see, it looks like it's there, but you have to, again, kind of, I don't know. So if there's any way, it looks like it's about zigzagging in and out of the doorways to get that protective sort of covering from the rain. Is that
And
correct?
that's a great comment, and I think it's key, and that's usually what will evolve as we get further and further in the design going through. But I think we will make that as a condition to maximize those within our property line. And if there's an encroach, we just don't want to set off a variance. But I think if we can add inches, feet on that, Matt Blewett and Matt Axman, to those areas, let's make sure they're thoughtful and maximizing what we have and staying within the zoning. And Councilmember Kelly, we will address that. I think that's a great comment.
Fabulous. And Jessica and Johanna, maybe offline, we can talk about the cafes and sort of the European style. I'm not sure I fully understand why it's that much more beneficial to an Evanston resident to walk in the straight line versus, I know, we talked about this with farmhouse versus having, waiters crossing back and forth across sidewalks. So I would like to continue that conversation offline as to those
we can
benefits.
definitely do that.
Okay, great. And let's see. And then regarding parking, are we not as a city now? I thought we were moving towards doing our own sort of independent assessments.
We are. That's a great. We are currently in the midst of an RFP to solicit that, and hopefully within the next few weeks we'll be taking that to council for approval. So we've been RFP. That's been a process right now. We're in the midst of that procurement.
So that's parking and traffic, right? Regarding
it's Jessica, what are we calling it? What's the formal name here that we've established?
The public transit benefit?
No. The study you're working on with the traffic consultants, the mobility, what are we calling that?
The multimodal transportation impact study.
Right. So this would be all the things: parking, transportation, with pedestrians, bikes, scooters, horse-drawn carriages, anything that moves in the right of way, we would be reviewing with these consultants.
I hope we can get that looped in time to apply it to this development.
We will see. It may not be, but we will. There may be further analysis that the city's consultant would do on this in future phases.
Okay. And Johanna, what did you say the ziggurat requirement would be versus what it is on this to set the ziggurat setback?
40 feet, I believe, is the requirement, and that's kind of just a straight dependent. It's not really site specific. So I think overall, Katie, if you want to elaborate on that.
Yes, so the setback is 40 feet from the Orrington lot line at a height of 32 feet above grade. So the setback that they're requesting instead leaves 6.4 to 11 feet rather than that 40 feet.
So that's considerable, right? And we can't, I think that is so important in terms of the feel for pedestrians and residents, those cigarettes and the setback there. That concerns me a little bit.
I think that's a great point. I would say though that the way it's stepped back from a pedestrian perspective, it is step back where visually you will not feel the canyon effect. So I think that ziggurat, I don't know, Johanna, in the history of that code, many developments, no one really is achieving that.
It's hard because these smaller lot sites, 40 feet is like that'd
be our whole site. So we won't even be able to build a building.
These are probably more for the Sherman Plaza, the larger, almost the block level developments.
Okay.
And keep in mind, our code is pretty ancient at this point. And so using better practices and ziggurat, I think was a treatment that was supposed to help the pedestrian environment, but we know there are other things that can help the pedestrian environment activate it and make it feel better. The building technology has improved and material have improved. So these are all things we need to address in a bigger,
I think ziggurat
way.
continues to be an important facet.
Definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
I mean, like on the Albion, if there were that ziggurat, I think so we're looking at 6 to 11 feet there.
That is correct.
And the reason it depends on where you are, because our building kind of bows and pulls back. So Matt Blue, I don't know if you have a good image to pull up, but I think the goal was to have the pedestrian not feel like they're getting towered over. And just like our project or the Albion, it's very similar in the podium, base, and a setback. You can see it kind of bows out to pull back and soften those edges.
And I would note that this is pretty accurate to the Orrington. So it is set back more than the Orrington's basically on the lot line and goes straight up. So we're in line with them at this podium level, addressing right up on the lot line, and then our ziggurat, so to speak, setback, as Johnny mentioned, it bows and arcs such that we provide kind of maximum relief between us and the Orrington to the south.
Okay.
And the widest portion is in the middle, and it's actually not as proud as the Orrington. So in all locations, we're pulled back further above 32 feet than the Orrington Hotel
Okay,
is.
great. Okay, thank you for walking me through that.
And then Councilmember Kelly, if you have any more questions, I'm starting to lose staff.
Yes, my last couple points, and we talked about this is, and I don't know if this is place or not, but in terms of amenities, since this is such a beautiful location, and it will be the building that will have the view access of Northwestern and the lake, considering any provisions so that rooftop can be used for event space for the community. I think the Rotary does that on one of its upper floors, provides community space for events. I think that would be, mean a lot to our Evanston community if somehow that upper rooftop deck space could be used for community space sometimes at least, or I don't know how, but figure out some sort of arrangement like that would be wonderful. And then obviously the other thing that's on everyone's mind is the use of this building. And I understand you're working with staff regarding so that this wouldn't come off our tax rolls, whether it be sold to a tax exempt entity or used for tax exempt purposes, which could also potentially remove it from the tax rolls. Obviously this is a big concern. So
Yep. No, well said on that. So I think just to hit up very quickly, because I know we're losing people, I'll hit on the community space. We're open to, obviously there's insurance risk and liability and security. We're open to hosting things when you want to have a community meeting, or the Rotary Club does this, just like we've offered our space at Abbott or Evanston. We have a ground level space. We've often done that. We do that in most of our buildings. So we want to be a community stakeholder, just like every other resident and owner in the area. I think there's just some protocols we have to go through. There's science and ingress, egress security with doormen that have to gauge that. But I think we're open to that. We'll open our doors and be try to be flexible as much as we can within that box. So that's key, and I think it's important. I would say the taxes, I think we're covered there because we're working with the law department on making sure that that won't occur to protect everyone there from the tax rolls. And I think that was it. Councilmember Kelly, I missed one of yours.
No, that's it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I do want to commend staff and you and a few others just for letting us have a community meeting. And then we've had iterative back and forth over the past few months. This is an important project to us. I know it is to you and all your community members. So we put them through numerous rounds of iterations and reviews. So thank you on behalf of our team.
Great. Thank you, Johnny. Is there somebody who'd like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for a positive recommendation with the following stipulations: that bike parking follows APBP guidelines, that the sidewalk carry through the alley without a change in slope, that the pedestrian walkway is maintained along the building, between the building and any patio area, and that the site plans reflect the showers in the locker rooms. Are there any other stipulations to be added?
Jessica, what was the condition before the showers in the locker rooms?
That the sidewalk carry through in a linear path between the building and the patio outdoor seating area.
Okay, so I have a total of 4, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other conditions to Jessica's motion? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Katie, please call the roll.
Iden,
Aye.
Griffith,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Kano,
He had to leave.
okay. DeHall,
Aye.
Piston,
Aye.
Kappa,
Aye.
Eckersberg,
Aye.
Hink,
Aye.
Pratt.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for this extra dapper meeting this morning. So nice to see you all bright and early. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thanks,
good rest of your day.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.